You know that age-old question about the tree in the woods? The one that falls when no one is around? Does it actually make a sound? So much of how we experience a place is what it sounds like. But what happens when the normal sounds, the normal crowds, aren't there anymore? New sounds chime in. It's like this whole time this weird orchestra was playing that we just couldn't hear over all that other noise. The shuffling of shoes. Dancing keys. Someone a little off-key. Actually, that's not so bad. So does a train make a sound if there's no one at the station to hear it? Who's to say? But maybe the bigger question is, when is everyone coming back to BART? Will they come back?
It's a little bit weird because it's so quiet.
MADDY GRANDY didn't know what to expect today. This is her first trip on BART in more than 3 months.
I was actually really pleasantly surprised. I mean, there were so few people on BART. It felt like it was an okay decision to make going back because the risk seemed really minimal.
You felt comfortable on the train?
Yeah, absolutely.
There is so much we still don't know about coronavirus, and even what the experts think they know seems to change on a fairly regular basis.
COVID-19 is mainly spread through close contact, according to the CDC, which means someone coughing, sneezing, or even talking on a train can pass the virus to someone else. In fact, those microscopic droplets tainted with coronavirus may actually be able to linger in the air, even after the infected person leaves the area. The World Health Organization says that's a possible risk in crowded indoor spaces with poor ventilation, which means other people may unknowingly breathe in those particles and get sick too, even if they've been social distancing. Coronavirus is also thought to be able to live on certain surfaces for a short amount of time. So it's possible to get infected if you touch something that has the virus on it, and then touch your mouth, nose, or eyes. But the threat there is considered pretty minimal. At least 20 of BART's own employees and one BART director have contracted coronavirus, although it's unclear how or where they got infected. Researchers at MIT believe the New York subway system was a huge contributor to the city's outbreak earlier this year.
Look at that, in the BART station.
But in the midst of all of that, the pandemic, infected BART workers, empty stations, MADDY still feels pretty safe. And she hasn't really budged on that. We've been riding along with her on BART for weeks.
This is sort of, falls in line with everything else about our world that has changed so much.
Sure, there's the weirdness factor, she says.
Everything is a little bit odd.
After all, the vast majority of riders aren't here anymore.
It does feel eerie.
But with each trip,
although I'm just newly getting back to it,
she actually feels more comfortable.
It seems okay so far, yeah.
The decision to come back to BART and share a confined space with strangers wasn't an easy one. She worried about contracting coronavirus and the potential of exposing her husband and one-year-old son. She weighed the risks. She understands them. She's a doctor at San Francisco General Hospital, but lives in Oakland, so she rides her bike to the BART station and then hops on the train.
You're not just a BART rider, you're also a physician. So what would you tell people who are frankly still afraid to come back to BART?
I mean, I think people have to, just like anything, make a decision that makes sense for themselves and their families based on their own medical conditions and, their housing situation and the risk that they're willing to incur, because I think the risk is not zero.
According to a recent BART survey, 43% of riders say even if they return, they'll get on the trains less frequently. And the vast majority, 80%, cited fears of contracting COVID-19 as their number one reason for keeping off BART.
We're reliable and we're safe.
That's Bob Powers, BART's general manager. The last time we caught up with him was to talk about his plans to improve security throughout the transit system in the wake of violent crime, frequent fare jumpers, and mistrust of police. Yeah, those problems are all still here. But now he has to protect riders from a deadly virus spreading throughout the world.
At an alarming rate. This is the first pandemic since the H1N1 swine flu.
Bro, you gotta wear a mask, bro.
You know, that whole thing.
Some people were concerned to ride BART well before the pandemic. So now with this health crisis, why should people feel safe on BART?
BART is doing everything we can to make the system safe.
The agency recently released what it calls its Welcome Back plan to lure in leery riders. Passengers are now required to wear a mask at all times, and BART is closely monitoring capacity to allow for at least 6 feet of social distancing on the trains. Before the pandemic, each car could hold up to 200 passengers. Nowadays, BART tells us fewer than 30 are regularly on board. Hand sanitizing stations have been set up at every stop, and BART is spending more than $40 million this year on additional cleaning crews and supplies. Trains are now sanitized multiple times a day, and not just with the standard stuff.
BART is fogging every single car in the fleet every single night.
Here's what he means by fogging. Cleaning crews are now using a special tool called an electrostatic fogger. These spray guns combine disinfectants with high-pressure air to shoot out tiny droplets. But before that mist is released, it's charged with electricity. And that static electricity means the cleaning solution is now attracted to nearby objects. In fact, that attraction is so strong, the spray is able to coat and cling onto surfaces at 75 times the force of gravity.
And that car that you've on has been disinfected.
What about the ventilation system on trains? Remember, the World Health Organization says you might be able to breathe in the coronavirus even when an infected person isn't around. Is the air inside these trains safe?
We're looking at that right now, and we're also looking at revising our filters and going with more of a HEPA filter, they call it, that really will clarify the air as it's coming through the system.
BART is now testing those new filters on a few trains, but won't decide on whether to install them system-wide until at least next year. Even without them, BART says its standard filters replace all the air in a train car about every 70 seconds, which naturally led someone online to ask, how long will it take for the new system to filter a fart out of the car? BART responded, about 70 seconds, maybe longer if you laid a real monster. Yeah, that tweet went viral. BART also hopes to experiment with UV lighting to disinfect the ventilation system on trains. And it's testing out this cleaning robot designed in Hong Kong. It claims to sanitize areas all on its own, sort of like a higher-end Roomba.
The doors are closing.
But it would likely be several months before you'd ever see them rolling around BART, if ever.
So if these new precautions haven't been implemented just yet, is that something riders on BART should be worried about right now?
No, I don't think so, because we already have implemented cleaning the trains, sterilizing the trains every night, wiping down the trains, the hand sanitizer. So BART is safe right now, and we're taking all the precautions.
Despite the dramatic drop in passengers, BART is still providing about 47,000 rides per day. So much of our lives are still impacted by restrictions relating to coronavirus. So what's bringing people back on BART? What are they seeing?
I'm just glad it's here and that it's here to be ridden.
Doug Davis is 66. Because of his age, he's considered higher risk for COVID-19, but he has no worries about commuting on BART. He's catching a ride to help a friend with an errand.
It's really kind of nice. Hey, it's my personal train.
Steve Lee was just furloughed at work. So with his day free, he's using BART to head to a bike trail.
Do you feel safe being back?
Yeah, I felt pretty safe.
BHADRA just landed in San Francisco. After sheltering with his family in New York, he's back on BART, headed home.
Right now it's empty and it's pretty clean, so I feel kind of safe. Will I be doing this often? Probably not.
And for MAIA ALPERN, the train is a lifeline. She's legally blind and relies on BART to get to her eye doctor.
I actually had COVID in March, so I really haven't been out of the house much since then. This is my first BART trip.
William Escobar never really stopped riding BART. He's a data technician and hops on the train each weekday just after 5 a.m. to head to work.
How does it make you feel riding in the early morning?
Scary.
Scary?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's not too many people in the bar. Yeah.
You don't feel comfortable?
Yeah. I don't feel comfortable at all. But I have to do it because I have to go to work.
So that's a look at who's on BART nowadays. But what about the 90% of riders who still haven't come back? When do you think you'll ever ride BART again?
Hopefully never.
This season on Derailed.
Your hair's on fire.
You see all kinds of things on the train.
I will shoot you.
But what you don't see is you don't see BART police.
They punched him a bunch in his face. They dragged him on the ground and kicking him.
A mother's fear that has nothing to do with the deadly pandemic. Plus, what our cameras happen to catch during the morning commute.
This can happen to anyone, and if the police are defunded, where are you going to go to?
And the health crisis causes a financial emergency for BART.
The issues that we have to deal with are enormous.
The transit agency is expecting to lose hundreds of millions of dollars just this year alone. So why is it buying a new headquarters, giving nearly every employee a raise, and spending $64 million on glass-enclosed canopies?
More than ever, we've got to be able to walk and chew gum.